Well, at any rate, hello everybody. I guess I didn't get something quite right there in terms of my opening, but I'm here. Okay. This is the last day of the Save Americathon. This is the last day. And I want to thank all of you for watching. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your contributions. We're going to probably do this a couple times a year. And I don't know whether this permutation obviously will change over that period of time, but we're going to do this a couple times a year. And I will get back on Monday to focusing on my campaign. But I wanted to help everyone kind of see the constellation of things that I'm doing and see the thematic nature of what I do. I love God. I love my country. You could boil it down to that simple a formula. I love God. I love my country. I love God. That means I'm a man of the word. I'm a man of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jesus is my Savior, my Lord. I love him. I owe everything to him. Every good thing in my life has come from him. The fact that my life has lasted this long, that I've been blessed and protected, is because of him. Because even before I knew him, he knew that I was his and would belong to him. And he guided me around dangers seen and unseen and saved me from my own sinful stupidity. So I owe him everything. I believe that my country is a gift of Almighty God to us, and therefore I owe a duty to my God, to my country, to my fellow Americans to do what I can to preserve the greatest constitutional republic in the history of mankind, a providential nation, a nation that I really believe that God has ordained and set up, that there might be a place for the gospel to go out, a place for people to live free, and a place that would look like the kingdom of God, in the sense that people from all over the world, from all kind of backgrounds, would come together and live together across racial and cultural demographic lines based upon principles and ideals, not based upon skin color, race, or anything else. You know, that's the sum and substance of what drives me in the public square, in the public stage. That's the sum and substance of it. So all of these represent that motivation. Staying true to America's national destiny, my church, the called church, save souls, save families, save the nation. My book, Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves. And, of course, my campaign for president, E.W. Jackson for president. This is a Save America-a-thon. So that those of you who may feel, because I do have some friends who might think, you know, I don't think the presidential thing is going anywhere. I think they're wrong, by the way. But that's okay. That's what makes horse races. But I still support your work at Stand. I still support your church. I love what you stand for. I love what you're doing. So I want to give people options so that you can support in a whole variety of different ways. You see the various options that you have, because I have big supporters who have not given to my campaign, but have given big time to Stand. So, and that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate the folks who have given to all, and many of you have given to my church, you've given to Stand, you've given to my campaign. You are 100% supporters, and I want to thank you for that. I really do. I really do. In fact, I've learned something during this campaign about the loyalty and commitment of people. Because, you know, some people surprise you and some people disappoint you. And that's okay. That's part of the learning experience, right? You walk away from that. You don't walk away bitter. You don't walk away unforgiving. You don't walk away angry. But you walk away with knowledge that you didn't have before, right? An understanding of people that you didn't have before. And so that's a blessing. Look, I want to talk about really two things today. Israel, and I want to talk about the Biden family and this new book that I've been reading. I'm about halfway through it, on Breaking Biden by Alex Marlowe. But let's start with Israel. Here's my number one thing. Here's the first thing I'm going to say to you. I am tired of hearing from two-bit politicians and from airhead pundits and prognosticators, and from people who think that they're so wise and so understanding, that Islam is great. It's just that some people have perverted Islam. Now that's what I'm hearing some of these people. Islam is great, but some people have perverted Islam, and that what we're seeing is not truly Islam. Well, either you've never read a history book, you've never read the Quran, you don't know anything about the history of Islam, or you know that, all that, and you just lie, just lying. You know, folks, when I began to, because I was a big supporter of George Bush too, because, I mean, again, Christian, conservative, first term wasn't too bad. But I'll tell you, when the turning point really came for me was when he came out and said, well, Islam is a peaceful religion. And I thought, are you stupid? Or do you just not know and you got advisors around you feeding you that drivel? Islam is not a peaceful religion. That doesn't mean that there aren't peaceful Muslims. There are. But Islam is not a peaceful religion. It never was, it is not, and it never will be, because it was birthed in militance and the warrior code. Muhammad was a warrior, and he believed in spreading Islam by the edge of the sword. And that culture is very much a part of Muslim culture. I mean, let's stop lying to ourselves and lying to other people and kidding ourselves and misleading and deceiving other people. Stop it. That doesn't make you a homophobe. It doesn't make you, I mean, homophobe, forget it. Doesn't make you an Islamophobe. I'm not afraid of Islam. I'm not afraid of anything, to tell you the truth. I fear God, not man. So it's not fear. It's just a commitment to the truth. I mean, my goodness, built into the Quran, the people say that Muhammad had two phases. In one phase, he wasn't anti-Semitic. In another phase, he was. It doesn't matter. The Quran is a book of anti-Semitism because the Quran tells Muslims to kill Jews wherever you find them. The Quran tells them that. The Quran calls Christians infidels and tells people that you have to kill the infidel, tells Muslims you have to kill the infidel. Now, I know that not every Muslim adheres to that. Not every Muslim is doing that. Not every Muslim wants to do that, obviously. But that doesn't change the nature of their religion. That's just a tribute to them as people who have at least been thoughtful enough to say, well, okay, you just quietly ignore that. Because, you know, you're not going to find Muslims denouncing anything the Quran says. They just quietly ignore it. I've never met a Muslim, and not that, forgive me, because obviously Islam, my understanding, is the largest religion in the world. So I know that I'm extrapolating from a sample of a very few here. I've never met a Muslim who didn't hate Jews, ever. Now, I'd love to meet one. Say, well, I'm a Muslim, I don't hate Jews, and I don't have any problem with Israel. I'd love to meet one. I've never met one. Because they're taught that. And what is the end game for Islam? It is a worldwide caliphate, the belief that everyone must come under the Islamic caliphate, that they are destined to rule the world. In fact, I think it was the Iranian mullah who is, oh, please, I got to get something off my. It is the Iranian mullah who is calling for a worldwide jihad. And when these, again, these stupid politicians and prognosticators come on, tell me, well, this is not truly Islam. This is not true Islam. Well, what do they know about what true Islam is? I mean, have they looked at the history of the Barbary pirates? Have have they looked at the Islamic rulership over Spain in the 14th and 15th centuries? Actually, for about 700 years, Islam ruled Spain. Have they looked at the Islamic wars against people? I mean, have they seen any of this? You know, the Crusades weren't born of a bunch of people saying, you know, we don't like Muslims, let's go attack them. It was born of Islamic control over Jerusalem and Judea, in the sense by Christians, misguided or not, that something had to be done. It was a response to the aggressiveness of Islam. So, who are we kidding? Islam is a peaceful religion. I'm looking at pictures now. It looks like not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, but looks to me like potentially millions of people in the Middle East. I'm looking at pictures of Yemen right now. So what are they all? That's just a small, like 1% of Muslims, and the rest of them are at home, peacefully mourning the killing of innocent men, women, and children, including babies being chopped up. They're at home mourning that because they don't hate the Jews. I mean, we got to stop lying to ourselves, folks. And we got to stop saying things because they sound good and they sound politically correct. Oh, yeah, Islam is a peaceful religion. It's just that some people have hijacked it. I mean, that's a statement of pure ignorance. Because there's never been anything peaceful about Islam. I mean, they've been, from the very beginning, seeking a worldwide caliphate. Sorry about that, folks. They've been, from the very beginning, seeking a worldwide caliphate. And I don't think that's ever changed. Let me add one other thing to it, since we're talking about Islam and telling the truth about Islam. There would never have been an Atlantic slave trade had there not been an Islam that had for centuries already been perfecting the enslavement of sub-Saharan Africans. Did you hear what I just said? There would never have been a European transatlantic slave trade had it not been the Muslims who perfected the enslavement of sub-Saharan Africans. It was the Muslims who identified dark-skinned Africans as slaves. They came up with a word, abid, which meant both African and slave. In fact, among Muslims today, that word can still be used as a derogatory word against black people. So let's just quit it. Let's just quit kidding ourselves and kidding other people and deceiving other people. Now, let me just hasten to add, I'm not interested in outlawing anybody's religion. I believe that the First Amendment means what it says. Congress shall make no law affecting the establishment of religion, and that the free exercise thereof, nor prohibiting, I think it's prohibiting, the free exercise thereof, that freedom of religion, the free exercise of it, non-establishment of religion by our government are principles I deeply and profoundly believe in. Therefore, I defend the right of Muslims to worship as they see fit in our country, and to do it without harassment, to do it without discrimination, to do it without being attacked or any of that. You know, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can hold to constitutional principles, but as a spiritual matter, you can still tell the truth. Like I said, that doesn't mean every Muslim is a terrorist or every Muslim that no Muslims are peaceful. But what I'm saying is the religion of Islam produces terrorism, produces violence, produces militancy, produces radicalism, produces murder, produces chopping up babies. Because it is inherent in the culture of Islam. That is not an aberration in Islam. It is part and parcel of what Islam is. A person can be a Muslim and practice none of that. Great. And they should be permitted to do so. They shouldn't have, again, any restrictions put on them in that regard. However, I think local communities do have a right to say we don't want some great big mosque built in our community. I think they got a right to voice that opinion. It may not be a legal right to ultimately stop somebody from buying land and building what they want on it, but I think, again, the American people, freedom of speech is part of that First Amendment, have a right to say, we don't want this in our community. We don't think it's a good thing. Oh, well, now what about freedom of religion? It's just like I've said to you, I'm not voting for a Hindu. You know, that's one of the reasons why, I thought, you know what, maybe this was a blessing in disguise. I didn't get on that debate stage that Ronna McDaniel concocted out of the wicked and twisted recesses of her own warped mind, because I'm not voting for Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm just not. So, well, wait a minute. What if it were between him and Biden? I'd vote for Jesus. I'm not voting for I'm not voting for a Hindu. I'm not voting for a Muslim. I'm not voting for an atheist. I'm not voting for an abortionist. A pro-choice, so-called pro-abortion person. I'm not voting for any of those kinds of folks, and I could go down the list. I'm just not going to do it. Again, do they have a right to run? Sure. Do people have a right to vote for them? Sure. Vote for them? Absolutely, they do. And again, I defend those rights. That's what liberty is all about. I'm just telling you that me, as a Christian, as a personal matter, as someone who loves America, I'm not voting for a Hindu to lead America. I'm just not doing that. In that case, I'd be on the horns of a moral dilemma. I couldn't vote for Biden and couldn't vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, let me just be clear about that. And I think Christians better stop making that compromise, because, this is exactly what Israel did when they got into difficulty. They would run up to Syria, they'd run up to Egypt, they'd run up to Assyria. In other words, they try to find these pagan leaders who would be allies for them and protect them. And God would say, well, wait a minute, haven't I protected you? I mean, I find it interesting that you got a so-called Christian organization that would put a Hindu on the stage, but keep a born-again, Bible-believing preacher off the stage. Now think about that. They not only keep me off the stage, but didn't even want to acknowledge me as a candidate. Maybe because of the things I'm saying now. So if committing to supporting whoever the nominee was, and I thought, well, maybe I could justify it because he's not going to win the nomination, right? And we already pretty much know who the likely nominee is. Maybe I could justify it by saying, well, based upon the reality, but I was never really comfortable with that. So I didn't even have to do it because the media blackout stopped me from meeting the standard required in order to be on that debate stage, which is, again, probably a blessing in disguise. Because some of these needle threaders, some of these people soft. I mean, he also said, he doesn't have a problem with transgenderism in the military. I have a major problem with transgenderism in the military. A major problem. I believe it undermines military morale. It undermines the decency and readiness, I should say the strength and integrity and readiness of our military by injecting all this sexual confusion into the military ranks and expending money on giving people sex operations, trying to make a man a woman or a woman a man, which you can't do anyway. I mean, these are some warped people, and he thinks that's okay. Just not with children. Well, see, I'm against the whole thing. I'm against same-sex marriage. I'm against so-called gay pride or pride month. I'm against homosexuality. I'm against transgenderism. I don't hate those people, but I hate this movement that is trying to make this stuff normal in our country, trying to turn our nation into Sodom and Gomorrah. So I just wanted to get that out there about Islam so that there's no misunderstanding about where I stand. And remember, I've got Muslims in my family, and I love them, but they're wrong. They're just wrong. And they're going to hell if they don't come out of that mess, because it can't take you anywhere but hell. And I love them. I want them in heaven with me. And you heard, I'm sure, I'm going to go over a little bit of this, but as these demonic terrorists are murdering people, they're murdering children in front of their parents. And as they murder their children, and the parents, of course, break down in utter anguish, total shock. Just, I mean, are there any words that can describe what a parent must feel to watch some demonic figure? I don't even want to say it. They're raping girls in front of their parents. And the parents are there helpless, surrounded by a bunch of crazed, demonic individuals. And this is the kind of thing that is happening right before their eyes right now, right before the eyes of innocent men, women, and children, happening to them, and they're watching it happen to other people right in front of them. I mean, it's just, folks, it is just heartbreaking. We have got to support Israel in a full-throated defense of their nation. And as far as I'm concerned, that means the utter annihilation and decimation of Hamas and the whole family of militants that are trying to destroy Israel. And then it means going after Iran. You've got to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program, and you've got to basically, I don't know what it's going to take exactly, and I'm not going to make opine as a presidential candidate about exactly what to do to Iran, but I can tell you one thing: you've got to completely break Iran's, if not their will, their ability to export terrorism and to fund it. You've got to break the $6 billion that was scheduled to go to Iran should have been frozen the moment this war broke out. It should never have gone, not number one. But it should have been frozen the minute this war broke out. This idiot in the White House who was stupid enough to do it, or maybe I should say evil enough and wicked enough to do it, at the very least that should have brought a stop to it, but it didn't. It didn't. As far as I know, that money's still going. As far as I know, it hasn't been held up. I don't want to go through a compendium of horrors about the things that are being done to Islam, but I'm looking at an article. I mean, we've got at least 20 Americans held hostage. Remember, the $6 billion was supposed to pay for the release of 5 that Iran was holding. Now we've got 20. How's that policy working out for us? And 22 Americans thought to have been murdered. And I believe that probably the number of Americans being held is higher than that. That's what I believe. Or either that or the death toll is higher than that, because, you know, Americans are, that's like dessert. You know, you get to kill an American. That's like, I mean, man, that's great. Abuse, executions, kidnappings, murdering whole families at one time. In other words, trying to wipe out their bloodline. They haven't done it yet, but they're threatening to execute people on live television. They've certainly been filming some of these executions. Thank God they haven't been, as far as I know at least, they haven't made it into the public domain yet, and I hope they never do. Although there's a part of me that says maybe they need to, so that we understand the nature of evil and stop playing games with, oh no, Islam is a peaceful religion. We just got a few people who perverted it. Oh, and let me also mention, all of these pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses around America, this is what indoctrination does. Because remember, Israel's not a victim of the Holocaust. Israel is an oppressor, and they're oppressing the Palestinians. Israel, according to the Democrat Party and their allies, Israel is an apartheid state. The BDS movement, boycott, divest, sanction Israel. And it's Democrats who support that. Not all of them. But I guarantee, look, the Democrat Party is a party of anti-Semitism. Because Barack Obama is anti-Semitic. And as far as I'm concerned, Joe Biden is too, based upon what I've seen so far. Barack Obama left Benjamin Netanyahu in the basement of the White House while he went off and did other things, treating him like a janitor. Obama didn't even visit Israel during his first term. It wasn't until the end of his first term. He didn't want to go to Israel. He can't stand it. But he went because he felt he needed to. Just like AOC and Bowman up in New York announced, oh yeah, we support Israel. Yeah, because they want that Jewish money and they want those Jewish votes. They don't like Jewish people. They don't like Israel. It's just like Obama saying, I'm grappling with marriage because I'm a Christian. I believe that marriage is a union between one man and one woman. He's lying through his teeth when he said it. Because first of all, he's not a Christian, number one. And number two, he didn't believe that there was any problem with marriage between two people of the same sex. Well, in fact, now that we know he was writing letters to his girlfriend telling him about his fantasies to have sex with men, I mean, who are we kidding? He went to the Human Rights Council and told them that he looked forward to the day when Americans admired same-sex relationships. I guess maybe that meant so that he could have one himself without anybody questioning it or anybody raising issues. I mean, my point is, they lie. They don't tell you what they're really thinking because they know what they're really thinking. It wouldn't be acceptable to too many of their constituents or to some of their constituents, and that the backlash is more than they want to deal with. So they just lie until they think people are ready. So he lied about his views on same-sex marriages and all that nonsense. He lied about it until he thought the time was right. And then once Joe Biden broke the ice and said, well, I support it, then Obama was able to say, well, yeah, me too. Now that I've grappled with it, I've wrestled with it, and I've come to, I mean, please. The same thing here. Oh, I'm supporting Israel. Oh, they're lying through their teeth. In fact, all this outrage now, I'm saying, well, where has it been? Because Israel has needed their support all along. I mean, obviously now, but it's needed their support all along. And what have they been siding with? The Palestinians. A two-state solution, which is really a suicide pact for Israel. This young lady, Natalie Renan from Chicago, I don't know whether she's some kind of model or what, beautiful girl, she's missing. In fact, well, one can only hope that she's not dead. A 12-year-old boy has been, they dragged him off, and none of his family has been accounted for. They believe that he is being held. And by the way, you know, a lot of these Muslims, they believe that having sex with a young boy is some kind of rite of passage or something. It's degenerate. They don't consider that homosexuality because they throw homosexuals off the roof. But sex with a young boy, that's, you know, I mean, it's like the ancient Greeks who thought that was perfectly okay. It's a matter of status. Lord have mercy. Raping girls in front of their parents and murdering children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children. And then in smart aleck fashion saying to them, relax, they're in heaven, right? This is brutality. This is demonic. Look at this. More than 50 Israeli mothers, babies, and men taken captive, kidnapped yesterday. And they've got video of some of this stuff. Look, they went into to events and slaughtered people. That's how you get up to 1,250 people murdered, because they went into events and slaughtered whole groups of people. They murdered Holocaust survivors. Survived the Holocaust only to be murdered by a bunch of two-bit terrorist Muslims. And yeah, it is Islamic terror. Remember, Obama banned that. You weren't allowed to say that. His administration couldn't call it Islamic terror. Once again, he's a liar. Here they're live streaming an entire family being held hostage, terrorizing them in front of the camera. Folks, it's just, let me add one other thing. This is really an insight that I really believe the Lord gave me that I'm going to share with you. And I know this could be misunderstood. I'm going to say it anyway, but you all know that I am a 100% supporter of Israel. Now, does that mean that Israel does everything right? No, no more than America does everything right. And I love my country and I support my country. It means that I really believe I have a duty before God to support Israel. And that God will ultimately judge his people, just like the Bible says, judgment will begin at the house of God. God will do the judging. The world doesn't get to judge the Christian church. God does that. The world doesn't get to judge Christians. God does that. We belong to him. Well, the same thing is true of Israel. So what I'm about to say should be taken in light of that. In light of that. By the way, I was thinking earlier about all the oppression by Islam. I was thinking of the Ottoman Empire. I mean, and it was brutal. You know, the first African slaves that were brought into Spain were brought by the Muslim leaders who had essentially subjugated the Iberian Peninsula, which then Spain, because it was under Muslim control. You know, that's where Shakespeare would get Othello from, because they had interaction with what they call the Moors, but they had interaction with these Muslims because these Muslims had basically taken over a large swath of Europe and were in control of it. They conquered it, and they held sway there for 700 years. So just a little footnote about Islam is a peaceful religion. Please, I mean, you got to have BBs for brains to even to believe and say that kind of nonsense, because it's not. But so let me get back to this point. And by the way, I've been told that my YouTube feed runs out at a certain time. I've got to beat that. So let me say this. I am amazed at the outrage of the newly found outrage of Democrats who are suddenly expressing their support for Israel. Well, maybe not. They haven't even done that. They've just opposed the protests supporting Hamas and the Palestinian attack. I wouldn't even say they've actually come out and said we support Israel, actually. Just a little distinction there. We'll watch that. But they're outraged because they hear these stories about the chopping up of babies, which ought to outrage us all anyway. But you know what? The Lord spoke to me. You can be outraged at a baby being murdered, but you support and celebrate the same thing being done to a baby in the womb. Because these children, they reach a certain stage of development. Children reach a certain stage of development. In order to get rid of them, you got to inject them with saline solution. You got to poison them, kill them, and then you rip their bodies apart, pulling them out of the mother's uterus. That's where the body parts that Planned Parenthood undoubtedly is still selling now that the things have calmed down. They've gone back to their crime against humanity. But those body parts that they were selling, that's where they were coming from. They were coming from the babies being ripped apart when they're being pulled out of their mother's womb, as well as those that are being delivered whole and then just allowed to die, if they weren't dead when they came out of their mother's womb. So what's the difference? Well, the only difference as I can see it is one is out in the all of killers all celebrate the destruction of this unborn baby and the ripping apart of its body in the mother's womb if it's come to that point of development. Or it's just flushed out like so much trash. Isn't that what they probably do with the bodies of babies? Just discard them like trash? And is that what they do in an abortion clinic? Just discard the baby like trash? See, look, I know that some people may have a problem with this, but if you think about it, just think about it. They're equally outrageous. They're equally barbaric. Just because one has the imprimatur of the racist, elitist Planned Parenthood doesn't make it right, doesn't make it any less so, doesn't make it any less barbaric. So these Democrats, with their newfound outrage over the killing of babies, they ought to find that same outrage over the killing of unborn babies, because I feel the same way. They're equally barbaric. The only thing is that we, in our country, these people are able to do this under the protection of the law. But it doesn't make it right. It does not make it right. And so it has to be fought out as a legal battle, not a violent one. Okay, so I'm not in a way suggesting you got to kill these terrorists, because obviously they're on a path of destruction to kill everybody, not just babies, but everybody. They want to kill every Jew. You got to stop them with force. These abortions have to be stopped with the rule of law. That's why I'm proposing a constitutional amendment that defines life and personhood at conception, which would shut down every abortion clinic in America. There would be no more abortion clinics because there would be no more abortions. Well, there could still be illegal abortions, obviously, underground, because people who want to do evil are going to do it no matter what you tell them, no matter what the law says, obviously. But it would stop a lot of it, and it would no longer have the imprimatur and approval and sanction of the state. And there would no longer be tax dollars drenching your hands and mine in the blood of unborn babies. That would come to a screeching, grinding halt. See, that's why the mainstream media doesn't cover my candidacy, because I'm the only one espousing that viewpoint. But I guarantee you there are millions of Americans across this country who say, yes, I agree with that. That's what we need. Let's put an end to this. Okay. All right. Well, let me stop there on Israel, and let me take the last few moments I'm going to take and talk to you about something I've mentioned to you before, which is this book by Alex Marlowe called Breaking Biden. Folks, he could have named this book Breaking Hearts, because you read this book And you just realize there are people like the Bidens who could care less about this country. They could care less about you and me. There's only one thing they care about is money and themselves. That's it. That's it. You know, I'm incensed over the NBA selling our country down the river for a few bowls of porridge from the Chinese kitchen. But the Biden administration pioneered this. They've led the way. And there, by the way, there's some Republicans involved in this stuff too. This guy Schweitzer, I think, wrote a book. No, I didn't read that book. I didn't read that book by Schweitzer about, you know, all of the financial deals among politicians. And there's politicians from the Republican side as well. That's why I say, folks, this is not about Republican versus Democrat. This is about good versus evil, right versus wrong. This is really God versus the devil. And the devil is defeated. God is exalted. And Jesus is Lord. But I want to share some of this with you because you just need to hear it. And look, I don't get any royalties from this book. I would recommend that you read this book. I think every American, looks like I think every American ought to read my book. Every American ought to read this book because it'll tell you what we're up against with this presidency. We have a traitor in the White House, a traitor. So let me share with you some of what this book talks about. And by the way, all footnoted, all documented. He's talking in this particular chapter about how China frequently denounces, in fact, daily, denounces America as a racist, unjust state. America. They denounce America. In this particular case, they were at a meeting here in the United States in Anchorage, Alaska. You all probably remember it, where Tony Blinken met the CCP Foreign Affairs Chief Yang Jiechi, I guess you would call it. Jiechi, I don't know how you pronounce the last name. But after Tony Blinken has spoken, here's what Yang said, quote, China is firmly opposed to U.S. interference in China's internal affairs. On human rights, we hope the United States will do better on human rights. China has made steady progress in human rights, and the fact is there are many problems within the United States regarding human rights, which is admitted by the U.S. itself as well. The challenges facing the United States in human rights are deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter. It did not come up only recently. You know what Tony Blinken's response to this attack on our country was? By the way, an attack that Black Lives Matter, Al Sharpton, the left in general, the Democrat Party agree with. And here's what Tony Blinken said, quote, America is willing to admit our mistakes, and we're engaged in a constant quest to form a more perfect union. I mean, what he should have said was, we are not going to be lectured to by a communist dictatorial regime that regularly makes your people disappear, puts them in labor camps, tortures them, murders them, attacks people because they're Christians, attacks them because they're Muslims. We are not about to be lectured to by a regime that doesn't have a clue about human rights and could care less about human rights. We recognize the human dignity of every single American. Instead of this weepy, mealy mouth, well, we're trying to correct our problems. China, we'll kowtow to you. Please, please don't be mad at us. We're trying to we're trying to be as good as you are, China. Oh, Lord have mercy. How I'd like to be president of the United States, and for no other reason, just to see an idiot like this walk out the door. So, and then here's the other thing. I'll leave that alone for the moment, because we've seen this before. This is what we saw the same thing with the NBA and LeBron James, the NBA, where they're busy denouncing America. America's unjust. America's racist. Oh, China. Oh, no. China's great. China's great. Anybody don't think China's great? They just don't understand China. I mean, Lord, help us. You all have heard about this, so I've got a rather long passage to read, but this is worth hearing. This is about the buying up of property in the United States of America by communist China and communist Chinese supported groups. And by the way, folks, I live not 10, maybe 15 miles from the Smithfield Foods headquarters, which is now owned by communist China. Says, when the Fufeng Group, a Chinese food manufacturer with links to the Chinese Communist Party, sought to purchase farmland in North Dakota near a U.S. Air Force base in 2021, Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen had the opportunity to block the deal. The Secretary of the Treasury could have blocked the deal. Fufeng Group's chairman, Li Junchun, is a member of the CCP who has been recognized by the party as, quote, a model laborer and politician. Due to the close proximity of the farmlands to Grand Forks Air Force Base, concerns were raised, including by Florida Senator Marco Rubio and others. Rubio wrote to Yellen and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin urging them to review the deal. Well, he should have urged them to reject the deal. Grand Forks is known for world-class intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities. It's the definition of high-capability base. There's no reason why the CCP-affiliated entity should be anywhere nearby. And if China hoped to do espionage, now they had a commercial auspice for being in the region. Why are we making things this easy for the CCP? So says the author. Our government officials facilitated the purchase of farmland near the U.S. Air Force Base in North Dakota. You see what I mean about, they're not looking out for the American people. They're not looking out for us. They're looking out for themselves. Who knows what China's promised these people? Who knows what they're going to get when they leave office? But you can rest assured that China knows how to make Americans rich in order to buy their fealty. Here's another one. Well, here is at least one American company. Thank God for them. They had the nerve to raise questions. It says a California-based company called General Atomics, which manufactures unmanned aircraft at one of its locations in Grand Forks, said it opposed the Fufeng project because, quote, it represents a major vulnerability for maintaining the necessary secrecy and integrity of classified weapons, communications frequencies, satellite connectivity, and many other technologies vital to global security. Now, this is this company, General Atomics. General Atomics spokesperson said, quote, Fufeng's foreign ownership and control means there is no simple way to ensure the facility does not someday play host to electronic surveillance or other activities that pose security risk to American and allied unmanned aviation. Now, here's a private company saying, why in the world are we allowing Communist China to set up an operation that close to our most sensitive military facilities? You know why? Because they bought us. Not you and me, but they bought these politicians. They bought them. Because if I were president of the United States, I would say absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Remember Biden, and by the way, he talks about this in his book too. Biden said, we are not decoupling from China. We are not decoupling from China. I would say as president, we are decoupling from China. We are going to build a different manufacturing base. We're going to stop relying upon China for any essentials for our economy. That's coming to a screeching, grinding halt the moment I become president. Forget it. Done. Over. Because, folks, our national security is at stake here. This is not a game. This is not a joke. I mean, God forbid that we have to fight China, but can you imagine fighting China when they've already infiltrated every institution of our culture? Can you imagine? They've got our kids hating our country and loving China. They've got our universities as spokespersons for them. They're buying up farmland. In fact, apparently, because I don't eat pork, but a lot of Americans do. I do eat occasional bacon. I'm not an occasional piece of bacon. I'm not religious about it or anything, but I know pork, generally speaking, is not the healthiest meat to eat. 1/4 of our pork meat comes from communist China. 1/4. 25%. He goes on to say, Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland increased 14-fold from 2010 to 2020. Now, what was happening in 2010? Who was president? Barack Obama. Now, maybe this continued to some extent under Trump, but I can guarantee you Trump would have done something about it, and so would I. It went from 13,720 acres in 2010 to 192,000 acres in 2020. Over a 10-year period, it increased 14-fold. Folks, 200,000 acres of farmland is a lot of farmland. According to the latest available data, 3/4 of all Chinese U.S.-owned farmland is currently owned by Smithfield Foods. Folks, literally a stone's throw from where I live. A company directly tied to the Chinese government. Smithfield was acquired by the Chinese Shuanghui Group. Forgive my pronunciations, I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin, which eventually changed its name to the WH Group. Oh, they Angloized the name. The acquisition took place in 2013 during the Obama-Biden administration. Surprise, surprise. To date, the $7.1 billion acquisition of Smithfield Foods is the largest purchase of a U.S. company by the Chinese ever recorded, transferring ownership of 460 individual U.S. farms to China. The result was that more than 1 of every 4 hogs in the United States is now owned by China. Americans we could have stopped the purchase of Smithfield Foods. Our enemy owns one of our largest meat suppliers in the country. Again, folks, it's difficult to fathom this stuff. One more. U.S. government supervision of the deal was so limited that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was left out of the discussion entirely. They negotiated that deal, and there's not a bit of American oversight, and they're negotiating with our mortal enemy. All right, look, that's that. Folks, I'll tell you again. I said this book is called Breaking Biden. It ought to be called Breaking Hearts or Breaking American Hearts, because you read this stuff and you just go, how can American leaders allow this? What is wrong with us? Well, you know it's wrong. Corruption. We are in the middle of a cultural and spiritual revolution in our country, and the intent is to completely overthrow our nation as a constitutional republic and turn it into some sort of Marxist state. That's the game. And whether that happens officially by some process by which they vote out the Constitution, which I don't think is possible, and I don't even think they're going to try that, or is it by cultural revolution that says, well, the Constitution is irrelevant and we don't need to pay any attention to it? And then you get justices who think that way, and you get lawyers who think that way, and you get judges who think that way, and you get law enforcement officers who think that way, and before you know it, the Constitution is irrelevant. Freedom of speech. Remember during COVID when People talked about, well, wait a minute, Americans have freedom, individual liberty, and Biden said, freedom. Sneered. And yet the Constitution was written to secure our liberty. That's where we are, folks. I need your prayers. I need your support. Here are several options that you can help me with. You can contribute to standamerica.us. That's my nonprofit. It's a 501c3. All deductions, all contributions are tax deductible. You can contribute to my church, thecall.org, also nonprofit, 501c3. All contributions are tax deductible. You can buy my book. Now, those are not tax deductible. You can buy it at a 15% discount at faithfultext.com, which is my publisher's website, or you can get it wherever books are sold, or you can buy it directly from me as a Patriot partner, and I will send you a signed, numbered copy of my book. I am behind in getting those books out, but I will be getting them out to you, okay? Or you can contribute to my campaign. Now, my campaign, I'm on a travel hiatus right now because our campaign has to raise money. I'm not going to play political games with you. I'm going to be upfront with you. My campaign has to raise money. That's our primary need right now. It's very, very difficult to raise money when you've got a media blackout of your campaign. I mean, I told you yesterday, or maybe the day before, they're doing stories about some guy, Turkish guy, well, born in Turkey, who can't become president because he wasn't even he was born in Turkey, not born an American citizen. He wasn't born in this country. He wasn't born an American citizen. He can't be president. He's running for president for the Democratic nomination. They're doing a story about him. How about a story about a former foster kid? How about a story about a former gang member? How about a story about a former juvenile delinquent who went on to graduate from college and Harvard Law School and practice law and run for office and write books and do all these things because of the greatness of America and the goodness of God? How about that? No, not interested. Just like that golfer was told, that woman golfer was told, no, we're not interested in her Christian stuff. We're not printing the Christian stuff. And I'm running as a biblical worldview candidate. That's what they don't want. The secular world doesn't want it, whether they are conservative or not. You know, I'm finding out there's a difference between conservative and Christian conservative, or conservative because I am a Christian. There's a difference. There's a difference. Well, listen, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much. My website for the campaign, of course, ewjacksonforpresident.com, ewjacksonforpresident.com. We spent the week on a Save America-thon, giving you the options and helping you to understand everything I'm doing to try to help save this country. Okay? That's what it's ultimately about. It's not ultimately about me landing in the White House, although I'd love that. But it's ultimately about saving our country for our posterity, making our country a nation that is pleasing to Almighty God. I know that's what you want. It's certainly what I want. It's what God wants. So God bless each and every one of you. Look, have a wonderful weekend. If you're here in the Virginia area, in the Southeast Virginia area, I will be preaching at the Called Church, 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia. I'll be preaching out of the book of Revelation, finishing up Revelation chapter 12. Come on around and check us out. I'd love to have an opportunity to spend some time with you, meet you, talk